That was the first thing that came out of her mouth. Just like that, without any warning. Honestly, I would have preferred if she'd slapped me instead. At least that would have made sense. But no, this was her reason for what she did. I'll explain all that later, but first, let me introduce myself. I'm Tyler, 42 years old, husband to one, soon to be none, if you catch my drift, and father of zero. For the past 2 decades, I've poured my heart and soul into building a business that transformed my life from ramen noodles every night to dining at steakhouses where the prices could make anyone choke. I run a software startup, my pride and joy. I won't bore you with the nerdy details, but let's just say I created something people can't live without, and they're willing to pay me more than they'd ever consider spending on their own therapist to use it. Of course, all this hard work came with sacrifices, time, sleep, hairline, you name it. But when you're driven, you do what you have to do, right? For a long time, I believe my marriage was a rock-solid foundation, the one part of my life I could count on, as dependable as the granite countertops in the dream house I bought. Key word, believed. I met Mia when we were young and clueless, back when money didn't matter, and love was supposed to be everything. She was stunning, and she knew it. Everyone did. Blonde, tall, with legs that could make any man weak in the knees. Me? I wasn't exactly Brad Pitt, but I had ambition and drive, qualities that back then seemed to count for something. We clicked, fell in love, got married, and played house like it was the natural order of things. But let's face it, people change. Or maybe they just morph into who they were always meant to be. Mia used to be, well, different. Or perhaps I just fell for an illusion. I won't pretend. I loved her fiercely. I adored how she looked at me like I was the king of the world when I landed my first major client. I cherished the way she'd twirl her hair whenever I talked about my aspirations. But at some point, that sparkle faded, and I ignored it like an ostrich with its head in the sand because it was easier that way. Here's where the plot thickens. When my company exploded and started raking in more cash than I knew what to do with, Mia decided she didn't need to work anymore. At first, I supported that decision wholeheartedly. My income was more than enough for both of us. Hell, it could have sustained us for 3 lifetimes. I thought she could chase whatever dream she had, find herself, all that jazz. But what did she end up choosing? Just herself. She became, for lack of a better term, high maintenance. I mean, we're talking salon appointments that lasted all day, spa treatments that sounded like they belonged in a sci-fi novel, and shopping sprees that could stock a season of Real Housewives. The moment my paychecks got bigger, she quit her job, and suddenly her career was all about being beautiful. Keeping myself curvy is a full-time job, Bran, she'd say, giving me that look that screamed I was the one who didn't understand the hard work that went into just looking good. And I'll admit, for a while, I bought into it. I figured that was just the cost of having a stunning wife. Want a sports car? You gotta fill it with premium gas, right? But as the years went by, it hit me like a freight train. I wasn't living with a partner. I was cohabitating with a high-maintenance pet that required costly upkeep. The difference? Pets bring joy, while Mia, well, she brought something, but it certainly wasn't joy. More like a bill and an attitude that was hard to ignore. Don't get me wrong, she wasn't always mean or nasty, just indifferent. And isn't that worse? I became nothing more than a walking ATM, and she treated me like a card she could swipe whenever she felt like it. You know how some people say, I never saw it coming? That's somewhat true for me. But looking back, all the signs were there. I just chose to ignore them. Then came that fateful conversation, the one about my cucumber. I remember it like it was yesterday. It was a Thursday night, and I had just returned from a grueling week-long business trip. I was tired but happy to be back, eager to unwind with a beer and my wife. She was lounging in the living room, looking like she had stepped off a magazine cover, draped in a silky robe that probably cost more than my college car. I thought it might be one of those rare nights where we'd actually connect, where I'd feel like a husband again instead of a glorified credit card. Bran, we need to talk, she said, her voice as cold as ice. That's never a good way to kick off a conversation. My heart dropped, but I tried to play it cool. cracking a joke about how I hoped it didn't involve redecorating the bathroom again. No, seriously, she pressed, piercing through me with those eyes that used to make me feel invincible, but now made me feel about 2 inches tall. I've been thinking about something for a while, and I want to be upfront with you. I was ready for anything. Maybe she racked up another bill on some overpriced handbag, or maybe she wanted to plan another trip to Cabo with her friends. The usual stuff. But then she blindsided me. I think you should consider, enhancing your cucumber. It felt like someone pulled the rug out from under me. I just stared at her, my mind racing to catch up with what I'd just heard. I tried to laugh it off, thinking maybe she was joking. But the seriousness etched on her face told me otherwise. I've done some research, she continued, as if she was discussing the weather. There are places that can, help you with that. Help me with what? I finally managed to stutter, my voice barely above a whisper. We've been together for 15 years, Mia. This was never a problem. She shrugged it off, so casual and dismissive. It's just that, I think it could make things better for both of us. I'm just being honest. Better for both of us. Sure, let's go with that. As if I was the one who had the issue. I can't even put into words how it feels when the woman you thought you knew suggests that you, the guy who's been keeping her comfortable for years, need to change something so deeply personal. For what reason? Who convinced her that this was even necessary? Was she comparing me to someone else? I told her I'd think about it, but my thoughts were already racing. Anger surged through me like lava ready to explode, but I buried it deep inside. Because that's what we men do, right? We suck it up, act rationally, and avoid creating a scene. But that night marked a turning point. I realized something had shifted, or maybe it had always been lurking, hiding in plain sight. Mia had crossed the line, and I was determined to uncover just how far down the rabbit hole she had gone. And believe me, when I found out, there would be consequences. I know what you might be thinking. After that conversation, I probably lost my mind, right? Started tailing Mia like some possessive boyfriend, rummaging through her phone when she wasn't looking, digging through her things like an insecure creep. But that's not who I am. I've never been that guy, and I never will be. If you find yourself resorting to snooping, the relationship is already in the grave. So no, I didn't spend sleepless nights dissecting every word she uttered or scrutinizing her every move. I'm a man who excels at compartmentalizing. Years of running a business have honed that skill in me. You learn to tackle issues head-on, shoving them into a corner of your mind so you can keep pushing forward. I had too much on my plate to waste time worrying about whether my wife was off fantasizing about a bigger cucumber somewhere. But I'm not naive either. That night, while I lay beside her, staring at the ceiling as she peacefully slept, her perfect, pampered self blissfully unaware of the turmoil in my mind, I made a decision. If she believed there was something wrong with me that needed to be fixed, then I had to find out what else might be going on. And there was only one way to investigate without giving away my suspicions. The next day, I picked up the phone, just one call, to an old buddy of mine, Derek. We've known each other since college. He's always been the type to view things from a different angle, as if he belonged in the shadows. So, naturally, he started his own detective agency, Shadow Works Investigations. Cheesy name, sure, but the man was exceptional at his job. Derek, my friend, I need a favor. That was all it took, a few words and a quick catch-up, and he was all in. I didn't need to elaborate. I could hear the understanding in his voice as soon as I mentioned Mia. Tyler, are you asking me to follow your wife? Yeah, I said, feeling a tight knot of anxiety in my stomach. I need to know where she goes, who she meets, everything. And just like that, once I gave the green light to a guy like Derek, things started moving fast. He had some of his best operatives on Mia within hours, professionals who could blend in seamlessly, who could follow someone closely enough to note the brand of gum they were chewing without ever being detected. Meanwhile, I attempted to get back to my regular life. Business deals, late nights at the office. The usual grind that kept me too occupied to consider what might be brewing behind the scenes. I didn't fixate on it. Hell, I didn't even want to think about it. Denial is a powerful force, and so is distraction. After a long day, I'd pour myself a drink. Maybe two, maybe three. Who's counting? I kept telling myself it was merely to unwind after a long day. I'm not the type to get fall down drunk, but a few extra shots of whiskey never hurt anyone, right? At least that's what I told myself as I downed yet another glass. Derek would check in with updates every few days, and each time, it was the same monotonous refrain. Nothing yet, Bran. She went to the salon, did some shopping, had lunch with friends. No red flags, man. If she's stepping out, she's damn good at covering her tracks. For a while, I started to buy into it. Almost convinced myself that maybe I had overreacted, that Mia's comment about my cucumber was just a misguided attempt to what? Add some spice to our lives? Bring us closer together? Hell if I knew. I was even getting close to telling Derek to wrap up the whole operation. Save the cash, keep my sanity intact, and chalk it up to a weird blip in our marriage. Then came the call that turned everything upside down. It was a Wednesday, just an ordinary day. I was in the thick of a meeting with a new client, trying to secure a $500,000 deal, when my phone buzzed. Normally, I would have ignored it, focusing on what was in front of me. But something urged me to answer, and the moment I saw Derek's name on the screen, I knew this wasn't just another routine update. "Bran, we need to talk," he said, his tone tight. Too tense for a guy who typically sounded as cool as a cucumber. "Can you talk now?" "Not really," I replied, stealing a glance at the client across the table, who was droning on about budget projections. "What's going on?" "Mia isn't exactly where she said she'd be today," he said cautiously, as if he were choosing his words carefully. "She told you she was meeting her friend Ava for lunch, right?" "Yes, so?" My voice quivered, already bracing for the blow, but not ready to hear it. She wasn't with Ava. Instead, she met up with a guy. Not just any guy, either. Let's just say it didn't look like a business meeting. They were at a hotel. And there it was. That single word, hotel, hit me like a bullet to the chest. In that instant, everything around me faded to crimson, and my heart pounded so hard it felt as though it might burst right out of my ribcage. I could barely manage to speak. "Are you sure?" was all I could croak out, my voice coming through like a strangled whisper. "Yeah, Bran, I'm sure. I've got pictures, got video. You know I wouldn't call you about this without proof." Proof. Pictures. Video. Evidence that my wife, the woman I had dedicated 15 years of my life to, was with another man. Not just with him. She was sleeping with him, probably right then and there, while I sat surrounded by strangers oblivious to the fact that my entire world was collapsing in real time. After that, everything becomes a blur. I think I wrapped up the meeting, or at least made an excuse to leave. I told Derek to send me everything, to lay out all the ugly details so I could see the grim reality for myself. Then I sat in my office, utterly alone, staring at my trembling hands, consumed by an anger unlike anything I had ever experienced. The silence was the worst part. No sounds, no movement, just me and my chaotic thoughts. The realization that this was more than just a fleeting issue. It wasn't merely a careless comment about my cucumber. This was a betrayal, a brutal stab in the back that had likely been happening right under my nose while I pretended to be the dutiful husband. But I wasn't clueless anymore. I understood what was happening, and I knew exactly what I had to do. This wasn't going to end well. Not for Mia, not for her little fling. Because here's the deal. I don't let things slide. I never have, and I never will. As for revenge, let's just say I was already plotting it out before our call even ended. After hanging up with Derek that day, it was as if a switch had flipped inside me. There comes a moment in every man's life when he has to make a choice. Fight or fold. I refused to let Mia walk all over me and waltz off into the sunset with her gym buff boy toy. No way. I was reclaiming my life, and I'd ensure she paid for every damn lie, every act of betrayal, every single time she smiled in my face while sleeping with someone else behind my back. The following morning, I contacted my lawyers. I had worked with them for years, and they understood how I operated. "I need you to prepare everything," I told them. When this divorce happens, Mia is walking away with nothing. And I mean absolutely nothing. They didn't require convincing. In fact, they were practically salivating at the prospect. One thing about my legal team, they're as ruthless as they come. When they go for the kill, they don't stop until there's nothing left. With that, the wheels were set in motion. Financial assets, properties, bank accounts. All those things most people think are untouchable when they're living their cushy lives. Well, I was about to change that. Every dollar, every piece of jewelry, every pair of high-end shoes that Mia thought she could flaunt would soon be mine. When the moment was right, she'd be left with nothing but the clothes on her back. Trust me, that's the best-case scenario for her. But amidst all this legal maneuvering, I couldn't shake thoughts of him, the other guy, the one who was sleeping with my wife. Thanks to Derek and his team, I had all the details I needed. And let me tell you, this wasn't some random fling Mia picked up online. His name was Liam, a classic tall, dark, and handsome type. The kind of guy who oozes muscles, tattoos, and a cocky smile that probably works wonders on desperate housewives. A fitness trainer, of course. I mean, this guy fit the stereotype to A.T. And the icing on the cake? He was married, too, with a little girl about 5 or 6 years old. At first, I couldn't wrap my head around it. This jerk wasn't just cheating on his wife. He was doing it while pretending to be some wholesome family man. It made me sick, not just because of what he was doing to his own family, but because of what he represented, the same betrayal, the same lies, just packaged differently. So, yeah, I could have just let it go. I could have focused solely on Mia and allowed Liam to deal with his own karma. But that's not how I operate. You don't get to mess with what's mine and walk away unscathed. And I had just the guys for this job. I gave Derek another call and told him to arrange a little meeting with Liam. I didn't want it to be anything too intense. No one needed to end up in a hospital bed, but I wanted Liam to understand exactly who he was dealing with. So they waited, watched him, and found the perfect moment to make their move. Late one night, after he finished training a client. Alone, walking to his car. It was dark enough to blend into the shadows, and my guys excelled at going unnoticed until it was time to make an impression. When they confronted him, Liam was completely blindsided. He probably thought he was about to get mugged or that a group of drunks was looking for trouble. But it wasn't until they shoved a phone in his face and asked, "Do you know the woman you've been sleeping with has a husband?" That reality began to dawn on him. "Why, what are you talking about?" he stammered, panic spreading across his face as the pieces started to click into place. The bravado faded quickly, replaced by sheer fear. And let me tell you, fear has a sweet scent when it comes from a guy who thought he was untouchable. "Mia," one of my guys said. "Does that ring a bell? Married to Tyler? You've been awfully busy with her, haven't you?" Liam's complexion drained of color, and he started stumbling over his words, desperately trying to conjure up excuses. But it was all pure nonsense. I didn't know it was a mistake, and other lame platitudes that nobody was buying. Then came the reckoning. I had instructed my team to hold back, but just enough to ensure he'd remember this night for a long time. I wanted him to think of me, Tyler, every time he looked in the mirror and faced the aftermath of his little error. Let's just say that by the time they finished with him, Liam would be dealing with some physical discomfort that wouldn't fade anytime soon. But this wasn't the end of his troubles. As I mentioned, he had a family, which meant his actions had consequences that extended far beyond himself. A couple of days later, my team swung by Liam's house, a quaint suburban home with a white picket fence, a picture-perfect facade. When his wife opened the door, a sweet, weary-looking woman holding their young daughter in her arms, they didn't have to utter a word. They simply handed her an envelope brimming with photos and videos. Evidence of Liam's late-night escapades with my wife. I wish I could say I was completely indifferent, that I felt nothing. But when they told me how her eyes filled with tears as she sifted through each damning photo, I felt a flicker of sympathy. She didn't deserve this. Neither did her child. But at the same time, she needed to see the truth about who she was married to. She needed to witness Liam for the scumbag he truly was. A liar. A cheat. A man who tore apart two families because he couldn't keep it in his pants. And now, Mia had to face her share of the consequences. Liam wasn't getting off without a price, but neither was she. My revenge wasn't just about punishing the other man. It was about dismantling the entire house of cards Mia had built around herself, tearing it down piece by piece until all that remained was ruin. Trust me, this was just the beginning. The game was on, and I was in it to win. Once my lawyers confirmed they were ready to go, I knew it was time to take off the gloves. I had zero interest in a clean break. I wanted her entire world to crumble, to come crashing down so hard that she would choke on the debris of her own making. It was time for Mia to understand what it meant to lose everything. So, what was my first move? I severed her lifeline. The money, every card, every account, every single penny that flowed so freely into her perfectly manicured hands. It all dried up in an instant. I contacted my bank and ordered them to freeze everything in her name, cutting off her access to every financial resource she had. I wish I could have witnessed her reaction when she discovered it. I can just picture her going about her usual routine, picking up a new wardrobe at one of those high-end boutiques, her arms laden with bags full of overpriced nonsense. Then, she swipes her card at the register like she had done countless times before, and nothing. Declined. Can you imagine the confusion on her face? The disbelief as the cashier told her to try again and again until she finally understood it was all over? I would have gladly paid to see that moment. The sweet realization that her endless shopping sprees had officially come to an end. But that wasn't all I did. With her financial lifeline severed, I made sure to cut her off from everything else, too. I blocked her number on my phone so she couldn't reach me, even if she tried. Trust me, I knew she would. That woman could talk anyone into a corner if she thought it would benefit her. So, I made sure she had no chance to sweet-talk her way back into my life. But I didn't stop there. I hired security to keep watch over our home. The one she loved to flaunt, the one she thought she'd grow old in. I found two of the toughest, meanest guys around and instructed them to maintain a 24/7 watch. If she dared to approach, they were to stop her at the gate and hand over her belongings, all packed neatly in black trash bags. I didn't want her stepping foot on my property ever again. And her attempts to reach me at work? Not a chance. I walked straight into my office and told my manager, from now on, Mia is persona non grata. She's not allowed in, not to be let through, and under no circumstances is anyone to pass along a message from her. As far as this place is concerned, she doesn't exist. I knew she thought she could charm her way into the building if she showed up, play the distraught wife, shed some crocodile tears, act like she was in the right. But no one was falling for her act anymore. It was almost poetic, because with that one decisive action, I stripped her of her safety net, the ability to run back to me, to beg for another chance, for more money, or whatever ridiculous excuse she would have come up with. She was on her own, and that was exactly how I wanted it. But it gets even better. Cutting her off financially and keeping her out of my life was just the beginning. What I really wanted was to obliterate her reputation, to ensure that everyone she knew, friends, family, strangers, hell, the whole damn world, saw her for who she really was. That's where my good friend Derek came into play once again. Derek had a contact. Let's call him a tech specialist. A hacker, yes, but not your typical lowlife sitting in a basement cracking emails for kicks. This guy was a professional, someone skilled at making things disappear and reappear. So, I gave him a straightforward order. Gain access to Mia's social media accounts, all of them. Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, you name it. And once he was in, I instructed him to start posting. It all kicked off with the pictures. Every sleazy, degrading image and video that Derek's detectives had collected of Mia and Liam during their hotel trysts. Uploaded directly from her own accounts, tagged for everyone to see. Date nights, hotel rendezvous, anything that would leave no doubt in anyone's mind about what she had been doing behind my back. But that wasn't all. I had him write captions like, offering intimate services, DM for rates, as if she were marketing herself to the highest bidder. And once those posts hit the internet, they spread like wildfire. Her phone must have erupted with notifications, an avalanche of calls and messages flooding in. Friends would be frantically questioning what in the world was happening, her parents likely panicking, and her so-called social circle probably abandoning her faster than you could say slut. And the kicker? There was absolutely no way for her to refute it. These weren't just anonymous revenge posts from me. They originated from her own account. Mia's fingerprints were unmistakably all over it, and she couldn't do a damn thing to stop it. She must have been spiraling. Her entire existence, that meticulously crafted image of being the flawless, stunning wife, obliterated in mere hours. I'll admit there was a fleeting moment, just a brief flicker, where I considered the cruelty of it all, the way it would utterly shatter her. But that thought faded quickly. It needed to happen. But all of this, the blocked cards, the public humiliation, the security at her home, was merely the prelude. The real show was yet to unfold. Because after everything was said and done, after her name had been dragged through the mud and every secret had been laid bare, there was still one final challenge awaiting her. The trial. And I was determined to ensure it would be a spectacle. A fierce battle where there would be no mercy, no chances for redemption. Mia had assumed she could escape the consequences, living her little fairy tale while playing by her own rules. But she overlooked one crucial fact. I don't lose. Not in business, not in life, and certainly not to someone who tried to dismantle me from within. As the storm gathered strength, I could only wonder what her next move would be. But whatever it was, it wouldn't change a thing. The pieces were already in motion, and there was no going back. The court date arrived sooner than I anticipated. And when I say it went quickly, I mean it was over in an instant, like ripping off a Band-Aid, except this Band-Aid had been festering for years. Mia truly believed she had a chance. Perhaps she convinced herself the judge would feel sorry for her, or that she could charm her way into some kind of favorable settlement. But the evidence, the testimonies, the overwhelming mountain of proof stacked against her was so solid that her lawyer might as well have thrown in the towel before we even began. She never stood a chance. To be honest, I couldn't even muster the energy to attend every single hearing. I didn't want to see her. I didn't want to hear that voice. The same one that once professed her love, but now grated on my nerves like the squawking of a vulture circling a carcass. I kept my distance, avoiding her presence, because laying eyes on her would only fuel my anger, and I didn't need any distractions. The law was firmly on my side. My lawyers were dismantling her case piece by piece, inching her closer to walking out of that courtroom with nothing but the clothes on her back. But there was this one day, one particular hearing when she managed to corner me. The judge had just wrapped things up, and I was on my way out, finally feeling like I could breathe again. Mia must have been lurking, lying in wait like a spider eager for one last desperate chance to ensnare me. And the moment she spotted me, she pounced. "Tyler, please," she called out, rushing towards me as if we were still a couple, as if she could simply waltz back into my life and erase all the damage she had done. She seized my arm, her face flushed, eyes puffy from crying. "Please, just hear me out. I'm sorry. I made a mistake." "A mistake?" I retorted, wrenching my arm away. "Is that what you call sleeping with another man for months? A mistake?" She shook her head, tears streaming down her face as her voice grew louder, oblivious to the curious stares from others in the hallway. I didn't know what I was doing. I was confused. I was lonely. Confused. I interrupted. "You were having an affair with a married man while telling me I needed to fix my damn cucumber. That's not confusion. That's calculated. You knew exactly what you were doing." At that point, she was breaking down, her face a chaotic mess of mascara and regret. She dropped to her knees, actually dropped to her knees right there in the middle of the courthouse like we were trapped in some terrible soap opera. "Please, Tyler, don't do this. I can't live like this. I can't live without you. I'll do anything. I swear. I'll make it right." I didn't even blink. The Mia I once loved was long gone, if she'd ever truly existed at all. What knelt before me was a hollow shell, a stranger who bore a striking resemblance to my wife, but meant absolutely nothing to me now. I recognized that this wasn't about love, regret, or whatever sob story she was spinning. It was about money, about power, about saving face. I leaned in just close enough for her to hear me and said, "You're nothing to me. Absolutely nothing. Just yesterday, I had my fun with a couple of girls, and guess what? Not a single one of them had a problem with the size of my cucumber. In fact, they loved it." In that instant, the expression in her eyes shifted. The pleading, the desperation, it all morphed into something else, something dark and venomous. She stood up, trembling with rage, fully aware that she wouldn't get what she wanted. She was about to walk away with nothing, and deep down, she knew it. "You're a bastard, Tyler," she shouted, her voice reverberating through the hallway. "A cold-hearted, selfish asshole." I continued walking, not even glancing back as she hurled insults, attempting to provoke a reaction from me, desperate for a scrap of my attention, even if it was tinged with hate. But I was done with her. I was finished with her lies, her schemes, her fake tears. When I reached the door, I finally turned around, locking eyes with her for one last time, and raised my middle finger high and proud. Then I walked out, leaving her standing there, surrounded by her own mess, utterly alone in every conceivable way. The door slammed shut behind me, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I experienced a sense of freedom. The trial was concluded, but my life was just beginning. Once the dust settled and Mia was officially out of my life, I did what any man emerging from a toxic marriage would do. I started truly living. I mean, really living. No longer did I have to carry the burden of dead weight or feel like my home was a prison. I was a free man, and the world was my oyster. The first step I took was to hire top-notch talent to take over my role at work. Seriously, why spend my days drowning in contracts and spreadsheets when I could be out in the world, savoring the rewards of my labor? So, I promoted some of my best employees to manage the daily operations, allowing the company to run smoothly without my constant oversight. Sure, I kept my finger on the pulse. After all, it's my baby, but I delegated enough responsibility so I could finally pursue something I had been putting off for years: travel. I packed my bags and hit the road. I explored the Caribbean's stunning beaches, wandered through vineyards in Tuscany, spent dazzling nights beneath the neon lights of Tokyo, and woke up to breathtaking ocean views in Bali. I found myself on a rooftop bar overlooking a city skyline, a glass of scotch in one hand and a gorgeous woman in the other. This time wasn't about filling a void. It was about rediscovering what it felt like to genuinely enjoy my life. To laugh, to dance, to embrace the freedom of not caring for once. Each experience, every adventure, felt like a step further away from the hell that Mia had put me through and closer to the life I was always meant to lead. While my life was on an upward trajectory, hers was plummeting straight to rock bottom. I caught wind of snippets here and there. Because let's be honest, when you fall from grace, word spreads fast. Once the queen of social circles, Mia was now practically a pariah. Most of her friends severed ties, either not wanting to be linked to the scandal or recognizing her toxicity. All those luxurious habits she had cultivated during our marriage, yeah, they didn't just vanish. The only problem? The cash flow dried up. Of course, she tried to find a way out of her predicament. I heard she was attempting to hook up with a businessman I knew, a wealthy real estate investor who ran in the same circles as me. The kind of guy she would have drooled over back when we were together. But you know how these things go. People talk. He was fully aware of the entire saga involving Mia's affair, her drama, and all the mess that came with it. So when she approached him, batting her eyelashes and attempting to play the same game she had played with me, he wasted no time in shutting her down. "Get lost," he told her. "You're bad news, and I don't want your kind of trouble." Brutal, but I guess she received the message loud and clear. No one wanted to deal with a woman who had scandal written all over her forehead. As for Liam, her oh-so-handsome fitness trainer, well, he didn't fare much better. His wife, bless her soul, wasted no time tossing him out the second my guys handed her the evidence. I think he was expecting her to break down and plead for an explanation, but she didn't give him the satisfaction. She served him divorce papers right away, leaving him standing there like the fool he was, utterly perplexed by what had gone wrong. And since I wasn't done with him yet, I made sure to leave him a parting gift. You see, a guy like Liam thrives on reputation. Being a fitness trainer is all about trust. Clients need to feel comfortable, safe, and cared for. So, I made a couple of phone calls, one to the owner of the gym where he worked, a few more to his higher-paying clients. I simply told them the truth. I revealed what kind of man Liam really was, how he preyed on married women, how he destroyed his own family. In this business, image is everything. He didn't stand a chance. By the end of the week, he was fired, out of a job, out of a marriage, and likely out of hope. Now, some of you might think I took things too far. You might be wondering, Tyler, why go to all that trouble? Why not just walk away and let karma handle it? Sure, maybe that's what a better man would have done, but I'm not a saint. I wasn't going to let these people screw me over and simply walk away like nothing had happened. They wanted to play dirty? I was going to show them just how deep the mud could get. And here I am now, sitting on a beach with a cold drink in my hand, gazing out at the ocean, feeling for the first time in a long while like my life is truly mine. No dead weight dragging me down, no secrets, no lies. Just me, my freedom, and the entire world waiting to be explored. I guess I have Mia to thank for that, in some twisted way. If she hadn't blown everything up, I might still be trapped in a miserable marriage pretending everything was fine. So let me ask you, what would you have done in my position? If someone shattered your life and stomped all over your heart, would you have let them go quietly? Or would you have ensured they paid the price? Just like I did?